we could, I'm not advocating one way or the other, I'm going back and forth, but we could do it for study sessions and not retreats. So that's number one. Second, that we've had a number of discussions over the years over redundant presentations. That we have presentations on in study sessions and then it's regurgitated in or a consolidated version of it at the public meetings on the camera. By having a videotape of this meeting, we could consolidate those two and not have the redundant presentations. I know trustee.
That's a good point. Also, absenteeism, it's a lot easier to watch exactly what was said than to read minutes, which are, no offense to either of us, but very condensed.
It could help us if we happen to be absent
Right.
from a meeting.
That's what you meant.
Yeah. Okay.
And listen, I just like the argument of videotape as an example. I guess to the township meeting, there was some critical meetings that went on, and it was nice. I didn't want to go. It was nice to watch the video, the videotape.
They don't do study sessions.
I'm just saying, but it does make it helpful to watch it and read the minutes, try to figure out what's going on with the minutes. But.
And realize also that there is nothing precluding us per Michigan law and OMA to do votes at at study sessions. So, and occasionally, as a matter of fact, we're doing it tonight. So without a video, we're going to be taking a vote, which is perfectly legal, but not in front of the camera, except for this camera right here, which is not our camera. And we don't know the distribution of this video, and it will not, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent, but I don't think a video that's shot here is going to end up on our website. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware.
So therefore, this video that's being taken of us right now will be distributed in some way, either YouTube or something like that, but it will not be even though it is a formal meeting of ours, it will not be on our website.
It will not be part of bhs2me.org.
Right, and that's something to think about also.
All right, no other discussion then, I guess.
I guess a question, because there's a couple of points that Howard made that I'd like to respond to, I guess. We've had policy heretofore where we do not, we talk about something in advance of making a decision. We don't discuss something in study session and make a decision on it the same night that we have taken, so that we've taken the time to consider. And I guess I'd like to clarify if we are now thinking that we're going to be taking votes in study sessions. I don't think that's appropriate.
I agree. But we have right now on our agenda study session 3C, it says approved resolution for the legislative priorities, which are due in a few days. So we don't have a meeting in front of the camera, except for this camera, until after the deadline. So that's why this is on the agenda right now. So maybe we make an exception to our board operating procedures, which currently we don't have. Nothing like that, I don't think, is in our policies, but our BOP past practice has been exactly what you said, Cynthia. But right now,
it is in the policy.
It is in policy.
it is in policy that we have. Would it be a violation of our policy right now?
I thought it was
Okay.
Yeah, it's been our standard practice, we don't take votes.
But again, that is not, it's purely a Bloomfield issue because it is OMA. This is an open meeting. We can,
I mean, it's
Can
our
do whatever we
standard
want.
practice, right, we don't take
Yeah.
votes.
It's in our policy.
in our policy.
It's in our policy. So I guess the
You know,
policy committee needs to look at
I
that.
think we're referring to creating a new policy to have a first reading and then a vote the following month.
that might be for changing policy, but just doing a resolution is the issue.
There is something in our policy about bringing up a brand new topic and not voting on it that
there
same
is.
night.
Okay.
So strictly speaking, the
Tina?
So options are coming to mind. One option, I could certainly contact Oakwood Schools to see see if it would be okay to wait 2 weeks until the regular board meeting. You could make the agenda to remove that item. Another one would be to make a friendly amendment and make an exception to the policy given the deadline that was provided.
I do know from, it's not Oakland Schools, it's Oakland County School Board Association, which is
Okay.
an organization. And my understanding, and I can't tell you exact date, but I think the deadline is, let's say, Sunday the 15th, and I think they're going to have a meeting on Tuesday the 17th, or somewhere in that line. So therefore,
True enough, but the
it,
we vote doesn't matter.
we have had this emailed to us, I think, in August sometime, I believe. And therefore, there have been a number of opportunities for us to vote on it, and we haven't yet. And I brought it to the attention of the president that we're up against a timeline. And if, in order for, of the 28 districts in Oakland County, for Bloomfield to have a voice, we had to vote on this, otherwise our voice will not be heard.
Yes, because our August meetings were so early, I think it was literally a day or two.
And again, maybe.
Right, but I mean, I think, without getting into the nitty-gritty of this particular vote, I think the point is, one of the reasons we probably don't vote in study sessions, not maybe the only, but one of, is that because they're less attended by the public and because they're not videoed, this allows us the flexibility to be able to timely vote on matters in study sessions and maintain the level of transparency that Howard's looking at.
But the more important reason why has always been to give the board time to consider matters. They can go back to administration with questions that might come to them as a result of a discussion in a study session.
Right, but we had that with this because we got it in our weekly updates 2 weeks in a row, I think, at least the.
I'm just saying generally speaking.
This is the resolution. We're talking about the resolution, which I don't think is a controversial. It's right now. I think the board parking. I think what we'll do tonight is the board policy parking lot, which doesn't have a vote on here or anything. I think we'll discuss both of them, and then on the 26th, we'll make a vote, and then I'm okay to make an amendment, an exception past the legislative, which is right. I'll let my chair.
Can I ask this question? You're saying that we're going to vote on whether we want to videotape study sessions at the next board meeting?
Yeah, there's two items on the policy. There's that, and then the next one. Both of those we're going to vote on the 26th.
Right, because as part of the policy committee, I mean, I have way more than 2 issues that we parking lotted. Are we going to vote on all of those at the next board meeting?
No, I think we agreed. I think what we agreed was there were the policy committee. There was a list of things. There's the other items. I think the policy committee needs to go back and have another meeting, and then make recommendations on what we need to discuss, then vote on. The only 2 things that came tonight is the videotaping and the committee of a whole that we're going to discuss tonight and then vote on the 26th. Thank you, Howard.
And
No, I mean, but can I get an amendment for be time sensitive?
Well, we can do that at that
Yeah, we
point.
can do that.
When we hit
board,
3C.
we waive board policy, whatever it is, on voting on the same night as we discuss something, to be able to vote at the study session.
On 3C.
On just 3
I-
days.
When we hit 3C, we're not-
Only 3C.
for this evening.
Yeah, we're still at 3B.
Yeah, 3. Okay, all right, so we discussed the videotaping. We'll go back and we'll vote. If there's any other questions, we can discuss, have follow-up questions. The second discussion is committee of the whole. So just to give background, we have 2 subcommittees, the FFLA and the BIC. Right now, 3 committee members are appointed to each of those. Besides the 3 committee members, no one else is allowed because of OM8 to go to those meetings. There's been some discussion as whether or not we make those meetings, both of those meetings, similar to a study session and a board meeting of the whole and regular open meetings. But we have those meetings set up because, again, those are additional meetings and the timing works out for the 3 board members on each of those meetings. The risk, the reason why we want to have committee of the whole of those is so everyone has an opportunity to go to. There's going to be a BIC meeting, on the 16th. If someone who's not on the committee wants to go and hear what's going on and doesn't want to rely on the minutes, then obviously it's easier to be there than rely on the minutes. That's the advantage of having committee of the whole. The disadvantage is that if, let's just say, I look at the meeting on the 16th the meeting's going to be with Cynthia, Jackie, and Jennifer. If, let's say, I show up to that meeting, then if there's something that can be voted on, we have a quorum and we can vote. And that's unfair to Cynthia,
Right.
Mark, and Lisa. I'm just saying that's kind of the pros and the cons of doing this.
Yeah, so my experience in governance, you know, when you have a committee, it's usually supposed to chew on something and actually give a recommendation. But we haven't really done that in our committees. It's kind of like we chew on it, but we kind of give commit, but it's not like when I was in faculty governance or something, where you have a committee that's actually appointed to it, you chew on it, you make a recommendation to the Senate or the full board, and then they ask questions and they might tweak it, but it actually had a purpose that you have a committee that does that, and then they make a recommendation, and they it's like divide and conquer. It's like a purpose for having committees. The way we do it, it's kind of we just chew. We talk about our impressions, but we're not really using it as a body that makes recommendation that cuts down the work so that we're dividing up the work to be able to do something like that. Just this is something ever since I got on the board I noticed, you know, and so I'm just sharing it. So
Like sometimes it's just informational.
it's sometimes just
It's not
informational.
there for a decision. It's like, here, we want to show that, and you're like, okay.
And be careful of the word with OMA, it's not a decision, it's a recommendation.
Right,
Big-
even when I'm
big
saying
distinction.
a recommendation to the
Yeah,
full board.
The word is important.
Yeah, and so it was actually did work, and so everybody divided up. Now, I really see that if we, it depends on how we work these committees, right? If it just be made that everybody comes and everybody goes on, suddenly make a vote, that is not fair. I mean, because people who are thinking, that they don't know that something is going to be coming up for a vote. You know, it could be on the agenda. Then all the board members aren't having that chance to hear everything. And so I think we just have to be very careful with that. We have to be very clear on what our committees are supposed to do, what study sessions are supposed to do, and what board meetings are supposed to do. And if we're not going to do study sessions where we're really getting into the nitty-gritty, and everything is just going to be a board meeting, then make it over there. Just don't have any other kind of meetings because there's no purpose
You hit the nail on the
on
head
it.
for me,
Yeah.
in my understanding of committees as well. I feel like they have been numerous and very task-oriented, but they're specific now.
Right.
So I don't know if you have always felt like that, or if you're noticing that they're
I
taking a
know
different
it's
direction.
very different than my other
Yeah,
work.
it is
in
for me
governance.
really confusing. I don't know, and I don't know the protocol about how we're supposed to wrap up and be done with the committee as opposed to ones that are standing committees and keep. So I don't know
I
how
was
we can
talking about
just.
standing committee. I think you're talking about task force?
Right, I am.
Same thing.
But I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
for me, I would love sort of an overview of what everything
one
from the
does.
standing committee down
Yeah.
to the task force of what specifically and how you wrap it up so that you don't just chew and never swallow. The analogy is we have to finish it, whatever it is. And I really liked when I was on your committee and when we wrapped it up, you made sure that there was some finality to it, and the finality was a recommendation to the full board. So I don't know if that should be the goal about these committees.
I just want to say one. So I think an example of how it should be used is going to happen on Monday. So a group of students are going to come to the BIC and present on why there should be an additional holiday in the school calendar. So they're going to present, and then the three people that are going to be on BIC are either going to make a recommendation to the full board or not. You know, based on this presentation, and that's probably getting to Jackie's point.
That's
how
my
it
point.
how it
That's how
should be
my
used.
in faculty governance
Right.
or as a commissioner, that's how it works.
Yeah, but
So-
I think we should have that discussion. What every committee and task force and standing committee should have a defined function.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
And that could be a takeaway, Howard.
In preparation for this meeting, I've read the applicable sections of this book, which is an MASB, for people who are not familiar with it. MASB does a 12th edition now of Open Meetings Guide. It's the rules and regulations, not only the law, but also court cases that apply to public bodies and schools in particular. Two key chapters in here. One is, requirements of open meetings, and then there's another chapter on committee meetings. And there are very definite rules and regulations that govern how open meetings are handled and committee meetings. What this organization did before, certainly 6 of us, and I don't know, Cynthia, when these changes were made, but that's irrelevant. The process we had in the past and currently still are doing doesn't exist. What we have is we have the 2 standing committees, FFLA and BIC, and then the policy committee, which are committees, but we announce them publicly, we have public comment, and they're handled as an open meeting. So we have a committee meeting, Chapter 7, under the rules of an open meeting.
We're more transparent than necessary.
Well,
It's true.
so that doesn't fit, that's a square peg in the round hole. The rules here don't permit that, and that's how we got into the trouble of having an open meeting where any member of the public can attend, except for board members. Because then we would violate, we would violate not OMA, but we would therefore have a board meeting and therefore could vote. So, and Jackie's bringing up some excellent points in terms of what is discussed and what is the transactions that are done at our committees historically, and whether we want to do recommendations or just reports, and so that's what we do in the agenda. But what I'm saying is there are 2, and Paul laid it out very, very well in here. We have 2 options. Either we have committees under the rules of committees, or we have an open meeting under the rules, a general board meeting, not open meeting, a general meeting under the rules here. But what we need to stop is what historically we have done as long as I've been on the board, which is a little bit pregnant. It's a mixture of the 2. That's where we got into trouble. So whatever the resolution is of what we decide at the next board meeting, we only have 2 options. What Paul laid out here. We cannot continue current practice.
I agree.
Because that's where we get into this, it's neither fish nor fowl. So we have only 2 options.
They're not mutually exclusive necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think that's
I think that's what
that's what we've gotten
Sutton told
from
us,
Kevin
right?
Sutton. Exactly. And this is not
But
just
he
me
only
reading the
talked
book,
about
but it's
board
Kevin
members.
Sutton.
He didn't talk about whether or not we post the meetings.
What he
It's
said
not a
is,
violation to
it is
post
a
the
violation,
meeting.
because
But
if you're
it's now
opening to
it's
the public,
regular
what
board
board
meeting.
members cannot attend.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a violation.
That's a
It's
violation.
it's just kind of weird.
So I think what you're saying, how either we take our current structure, close them,
Right.
Yes.
right?
And-
Meaning no board members or public can
And the
attend.
secretary does not, the Tina's administrative assistant does not put it on the website. We do not publish minutes. We do not. Or it's an open meeting and it's handled as a committee of the whole. We have those 2 options. Not the amalgam that we've got right now is not right.
You don't publish minutes, are you sure?
Absolutely. It's not a public meeting.
You can't if you want to.
You
But
can't
why
if you want
can't
to.
you publish
So
minutes?
which
But
is why
the minutes is not as
the
much of a thing as the
report
open meeting,
of
the
the-
voting, and who's.
Which is why the report of the committees of those, the chairs of those committees
There you go.
have historically been very robust, meeting at our business.
Because
The report of those committee chairs,
only 3 people know, and now you're informing
And now
me
you're-
of 7.
yeah,
Or the other
and if
4.
there were, that's why the chair people.
It's just a matter of closing it to the public. Meaning public.
Or the other way, one of the
Or
2.
open it, so that's what we're voting on.
Right, but the other.
Close,
the other
meaning
piece of
the public
that-
can't come.
The other thing,
Well, the other piece of that is if you then made every one of the meetings of the committee of the whole, because a high percentage of the time, those committees need input from other employees or students, They are most usually needing to take place during the school day, during the business day. That is, then if all board members would then be needed to be at every one of those meetings, that may be a hardship for that, to have that many meetings on your calendar during the day.
I understand.
I researched this also. If we do, if we do a committee of the whole, let's say, we went with option 2 as opposed to option 1. You would have to have 4 people in the meeting, because otherwise it's not an official meeting. And if you had 3 people, then you could discuss things, but you couldn't make any recommendations even, because you're only 3, not 4. Also, Jackie had some concerns that Paul sent over to me in terms of how do we preclude the committee from making, if it was a meeting of the whole, how do we preclude them from making an actual vote? And the way you would do this is a few-fold. Number 1, you can set up a policy which says FFLA and BIC are prohibited from taking a vote.
Actually, Kevin Sutton said you can't.
Let me finish, please. So you can make a policy that says that. You can make a policy that says that. You can then do a BOP, or operating procedure, that says the same thing. You can even put in policy or BOP or both. That's kind of our running rules. Now, could that meeting violate that? Absolutely.
That's what he said.
So,
At any time you can
so let's say that you had 4 people in a committee, and they voted 3-1 to, well, let's say they voted 4-0 for something. Or let's do it this way. Let's say they voted 3-1, and we're basically violating the policy, violating the BOP. At the next regular meeting of the board would say, what the heck are you guys doing? Who gave, you violated the policy, you violated the BOP. We will, number 1, countermand that decision. So by a vote of 4-3, we will nullify that decision of that 3-person minority. And then it is the board's discretion then to sanction and possibly censure those 3 people
Yeah, I gotta say, me
who
too.
violated. So what I'm saying is,
Oh, that is way too complicated.
So,
That's not
what-
the way
wait,
it's gonna
so
work.
what-
It's
so
gonna
what?
just become all studies, it's just gonna be all
I-
board
you know,
meetings.
I
the
think-
only reason I'm
It's just
saying
gonna
this
become
is
board
we
meetings and
can-
then we just
we-
have
we
board
can-
meetings. Why
we
would
can
you have
go-
a committee then?
what I'm
You would
saying
just
is
put
we-
everything on the board.
we can go with either option and they will work. I'm not, so it's more of a decision of,
Logistically, that's a nightmare, I'm sorry.
well, anyway, so
I think what Howard was going to do is saying, if we voted on the 26th to go this route to avoid, of the committee of the whole, and, then this is what we'd put in place to.
All right, I
But
know.
I'm not saying it, I'm just saying
It would
that's,
just become
that's what he was
A
trying to.
board meeting. Every
say.
Thursday, we have a board meeting, we have FFLA part of the board meeting, we have BIC, it would just become board meetings. That would be much more elegant. Just put everything on the board and forget calling it different things that don't have any definition.
District employees from coming, and that's why this was done in the afternoon, was to enable people who might not otherwise be able to come after hours beyond the scope, of their, I'll call it 9 to 5, but it's really not 9 to 5 jobs, and allow them to participate in these things. It would force them to all come in the evening.
no, we can do it during the day. We can do it like we have been.
All right,
in terms of
can I
meeting
get-
schedule.
No,
can I-
no, you can't. That's not
Yeah.
fair to me. That's not fair to other people who aren't retired like yourself, who have full-time
But
jobs.
we're not at, but basically the
But I don't
committee-
have to be there, but you can vote behind my back.
No, we
I may
won't,
have
but
a
I just said,
constituency.
what I'm saying
You
is
could
we
do
wouldn't.
it, no, you say you wouldn't, but you could do it, and then by the time we undo it 2 weeks later, it's too late. You've signed a check, you fired somebody, you've done something. No,
But
I'm putting my foot down now.
We're just
That's a
discussing
logistical
it to be
nightmare.
voted on, that we're just going through all the options, Cynthia.
Just following through where Mark was going with that, the fact of the matter is, if all of those meetings are committees of the whole, then there's attendance needed for all 7 board members at all of those board meetings, which means that any board members who are not able to attend are then going to be registered as being absent.
That's true.
Which, in a couple weeks in time, people like to hold board members accountable, you can say, well, they didn't make 30% of the meetings, if you include your committee meetings. That's just an untenable model.
Even more than that, it can be misused so that we can hold board meetings when people couldn't be there. I mean, it can become.
But
I'm exhausted. That's my no. I remember wanting to do the meeting of the whole when we first started talking about this, and I honestly can't remember why. Maybe because as a new board member, I was trying to learn just by sitting at FFLA, even if I'm not on it. But it honestly, for all of these reasons, it sounds like way too much to deal with.
I think
and we should just keep it pure and simple.
And I'm not saying it's the right answer. I think the why is, as an example, and I'm not for going to a bunch of meetings, but there is a meeting on Monday just because of the student presentation. I'm into student presentation. I'd like to go, but I'm okay not going. No, I'm just saying that's the why.
Doesn't the law allow you to go under those circumstances as a citizen and not talk? No. Okay.
Can I say something general about the policy? And I know that the scenario Howard laid out is problematic for many reasons, but I thought that as a board and as a district, we were redoing policy. One of the objectives was to clean it up and not include in policy things we know are not going to be able to be upheld. So as a practice for this particular rule or any of the rules on my list or any other person's list going forward, can we please make every effort to keep all non-compliant policy regulations out of the policy? Otherwise, what do we have an attorney do?
I just think we're discussing it. We're bringing up all points,
right.
And then we'll vote on the 26th. And I think
I would be opposed to any policy change that includes something that's not going to withstand anything what doesn't withstand statute challenges, constitutional challenges. Does not belong in it.
I think as of now, we know where this may be headed on the 26th, but we could think about it. We could,
So, I totally agree with Jack. I think we should, at the next board meeting, do a resolution that addresses 3 items, that we go to a pure committee meeting. And that would mean 3 changes to our business as usual process. Number 1, it would direct the superintendent not to have the secretary, the administrative assistant for the superintendent, to put it onto the website and to make it as an open meeting. So that's number 1. Number 2, we would direct the chairman to start changing the structure of the meeting such that we go to the recommendation process that Jackie says is more traditional for committees. And not just reporting to us and we kind of nod and move on, but we actually do recommendations to the board. And then 3, let me just finish them real quick and then you can go back. So 3, we then obligate the committee chairman to have robust reports, and maybe even in writing that we can publish and even put on the website of a report. I'm not saying we need to do that, it's just a thought. But definitely going to what, so it's a combination of what you're saying and what you're saying. So we change our structure such that, pardon me?
Yeah, the report that the chair produces can then go on the website.
But it's, so we've sort of we bastardized the process, and we go back to a pure process where we actually recommend we have full reporting at the board meeting so the other 4 know what's going on, and not just we met, we talked about these things, and we recommended and stopped.
All right.
And some of our committees have been like that.
So I had one question. So for the structure of these meetings, getting to your point 2, so if, let's say, Todd with BIC and Tina with FFLA doesn't really have anything to get, to where that committee needs to make a recommendation, so then there wouldn't be any meeting. It's not just informational anymore.
Now realize that a committee is chaired by a chairman. And the chairman, so the what goes on the agenda of a committee is not necessarily only what administration wants to give to that committee, but it could be up to the board to talk to the chairman and say, hey, Mr. Chairman, this is something you should look at, and make a request to.
They're giving the report, the chair often is giving the report, the other board members are then asking the questions of other board members, so it is everybody at the table, so they're at the same level. It's not that the full board is asking one of the staff members and drilling them. No, it's the people that are becoming experts, that the board member is asking another board member, their peers, and they can drill each other, and you can defend your position, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but that's the traditional way of how committees are.
There's also times where it's just to convey some information.
Right.
I mean, for example, the first item on FFLA tonight was Human Resources Update on Personnel Matters. And we were told about 50 new, I'm going to really encapsulate, this is intended to be a summary,
Yeah.
about 52 new positions and 32 new teachers. That's done, so we can't make a recommendation on that.
Right.
I recommend that we.
It doesn't have to be only
That's fine. It's a question of the chairman whether or not
It
something.
isn't only
But that's what he's saying.
Yeah,
I
you're the
get what you're
expert though,
saying.
yeah, you're the expert though, so then you're gonna report it back
That's
to us,
fine.
and if we have a question, we're gonna ask you, and it's
That's
up to
fine.
you to tell us what's going on, so that
That's
way
fine.
it's, we're at the
That's
same
fine.
level.
Okay.
Can we just, for clarity's sake, talk about what we're voting on at the next meeting?
So I think-
So let me recap real quickly, and so we can get this, so we know how to word it for the next meeting. For the first item in the parking lot, we're voting on whether we want to record study sessions, yes or no, whether we're going to record other meetings such as retreats, yes or no. So there's two separate votes regarding videotaping additional meetings. And then the second issue from tonight, we're voting on whether we want option 1 or option 2. Option 1, treating this like an open meeting with
Meeting of the
meeting of the
whole.
whole. And option 2, treating it like a committee meeting instead of some hybrid of both.
Yeah,
There's not going to be like a third option, keep as is.
And closing it to the public. That's the only difference
It's not,
from what goes on
and
now.
this is just me recapping, I'm not
traditional.
trying to put
Which is
words in my
traditional,
mouth,
yeah.
but.
And I'd like to suggest that before the agenda for the next meeting, the business meeting is set, that we get accurate policy language that reflects those items. Rather than, because I mean, we have language that talks about committees now. We ought to be just updating, amending, rewriting, whatever is the language that we want to use.
Agreed. And it doesn't have to, if we don't have time, it doesn't have to be for the next board meeting if we don't have a structure.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is if we go with a traditional committee structure, which is not the way we've done it, that resolution has 3 components. The posting portion, the posting and running of the meeting, the reporting of the meeting, and the recommendations, as Jackie said. So it's changing our process from what we've done traditionally to a new model. Quite frankly, it's a model that's traditional amongst almost all school districts and nonprofits.
Governance
In general,
yeah.
but it's different for
Other
us. So we
schools of order.
need to phase ourselves into it.
All right, understood. All right.
And while we're looking at all this policy, I'm not gonna be at the September 26th meeting, so can we look into whether I can vote absentee? I don't know if that's allowed or not.
I don't think that's
Okay.
allowed.
But
Okay.
I'll
Electronic
get
vote.
your feedback
I
and
think
I'll
the
make
AG
sure
said
I'll
no.
relay the feedback
Okay.
before we vote.
When I was
Fair
a
enough.
commissioner, the state AG said no to electronic voting.
So I think
Okay.
we got that.
And before we move on to the policy issues,
I mean, the resolution.
right, what happens to all the other policy issues that we're going back into a policy committee and talking about? Because we left the policy committee, putting them in a parking lot. I'm failing to see the logic of going back to the committee and talking about issues we already decided we need to talk about.
But
I didn't know we were
I
gonna do
read
policy.
those, and I got the list from you, and I read those, and outside of these 2, I couldn't formulate a question to the entire board.
Well, it was the chairman. I defer to the chairman of the committee.
We had items that were, I'm trying to think, there was one that was about, we haven't acted on already.
Something like ice, one of them was.
Well, one of
That
them,
wasn't, we didn't discuss.
one of them is
It's in for the board, it's in part of your novus, was the whole, okay.
Yeah, so in the board policy subcommittee folder, which all board members, I believe, can view, but the board policy committee can edit, is the policy committee parking lot, and then also I added this of the parking lot issues you identified, so both those documents are in there, and one's more expensive than the other.
one of the items that I know was on the parking lot was the
Mhm.
expansion of an equity policy or something along that line, which would be giving some sort of reporting expectation to the superintendent on how diversity and a lot of issues are reported out. The way that was left was that was given to Dr. Glass to research. I think that was in April or March, maybe, I don't know, lost track. And it was given to Dr. Glass to analyze with the cabinet and get back to us. Well, since then, Dr. Glass has left us, so I think that one is hanging. So I think
Point of
that,
order here, though, just point of order. This is the one these are the ones we're talking about today,
Sure.
and while there are other ones,
I'm
it's
answering
not on
Lisa.
today's agenda,
All right,
so I'm
and
not saying
you're
it
right.
should
But
be
I'm
on.
just
just saying
answering
no,
Lisa's
it's-
question in that we need to have that as
But I
the
think,
No,
chairman.
but
to give
I
that
wanted-
to our-
What I was asking was for clarity as to the reasoning behind taking issues from a committee that couldn't decide on how to resolve them, putting them in a place called the parking lot, and then taking those same issues that are not discussed tonight, we did too, but the rest that are not, then sending those issues back to the same committee that decided we couldn't decide
Well, no, we
on
didn't
them,
say, Lisa.
put them in a parking lot.
No, we left, they were pending items.
They were parking lots.
No, this one was,
Guys,
it's a,
I
Jennifer and I
Guys,
talked
I
about
think
it,
it's
a pending
enough that-
item that was given to the superintendent is left.
but guys-
and it's
I think,
colleagues, it's enough that Paul couldn't understand it. If he can't understand it, then he can't put it on the
I'm
agenda.
agreeing with you.
Yeah,
No, no,
so
but I'm
just
saying-
that
I'm
he
saying to
couldn't
make it
understand so you gotta rephrase
yeah,
it.
so
he can
exactly, the
understand it.
point is, the reason why I wanted to go back is it has to come so I can articulate to the board what we're deciding on.
Well, can we go through them then?
What?
I mean, I don't know how to make an agenda item out of these issues other than say all parking lot issues that I didn't understand. I mean, I don't know how to
Listen,
quantify it, so we can eventually talk about it.
So here's
I'm-
a simple example. One of the ones was tutoring. Okay, right now, the policy says that teachers can refer students to in-district tutors who are teachers who, as long as they don't work in the same building as the student takes class. And some of us want to explore that a little further as to whether that should be changed. So that's a meaty issue, controversial. I think we should talk about it as either we talk about it back in policy committee and make a recommendation, or do we need to talk about it as a whole board?
I would like you, that, my point is talk about it and then make the recommendation.
Make the recommendation.
When you make the recommendation, we can still talk about it
Sure.
as
Yeah.
a board, but I just don't know what the recommendation is. Is it
Okay.
to go away from what they're currently doing? I
Alright.
couldn't
Okay,
articulate.
so that's the
That's my
direction
point,
we need.
yeah.
No more putting things in a parking lot.
You make
Okay,
a
make a
recommendation,
recommendation.
and then when you come to us and say, this is
Right.
what we recommend, we're gonna say,
We'll
but
debate
why
it.
do you do that?
Right.
But I don't
Okay.
understand that.
All of the
Yeah.
policies, and so the things that were most controversial,
Right.
after some conversation, we set aside so we could get through,
Right.
so we could get
But the
it done.
practical-
And we said we would go back to some
Yes,
of them.
but the practicality of it is now the most controversial things 5 months later have still not been resolved. So I'm not sure that was the best tack to take.
But when you make a recommendation, then it's like a strong horse document that we're going to talk about and
Yeah, I think
discuss.
the policy
you
committee
debate
needs to go back and then just, whatever the recommendation is, just as long as it can be a recommendation that we can articulate and then have a discussion. Like these two is clear, the recommendation was, do we go to committee of the whole or not? You know, do we videotape or not? Like equity policy, my
No, the
point,
recommendation should be, we
yeah,
should do that,
Yeah.
we shouldn't do that, not should we or not.
yeah, even those two were kind of vague, but, you know, we need to be, you know, this is the recommendation. We want to go to an equity and this is something like that. So if you can go back and discuss and then make recommendations to the board, getting to the original, you know, that's the idea of the committee.
And this will prevent some of the things we've seen happen that actually came to be where we're kind of drilling the staff in public, which isn't good. And so instead, the chair and the committee are the ones who have to become the experts, and then we drill each other. We're not putting our staff in between us. That's not right. It should be us being the experts. We drill each other and debate each other. We can go back and clarify something, but it should never be, and we all know, we feel it, and you know what I'm talking about, when
it's really a dynamic, is like we're all drilling a staff member in public, which is really just not fair. It's not fair. We should be making our own decisions and then drilling each other.
And I agree with you. My only thought with that is, when administration does a presentation and then asks for questions, do the questions then get talked to the other board members, or do we talk to the administration person, or do we take all of our questions and turn to the superintendent and
Okay.
ask the superintendent
But
questions?
that's not about committees, and we're really just talking about
Yeah,
committees
let's-
here, so you
well,
want
Let's,
to.
you know what,
We
yeah, I
have
don't
to
wanna,
talk about
I
it,
don't
but
wanna,
it's not
I don't wanna,
what's
but
on
I
the
think,
agenda.
but I think we know what needs to, so I'm gonna go to 3C.
Wait, before that, sorry, I need to
So,
drill
well, we
staff.
need to have a
members.
Yeah. She's gonna drill
No,
a board member.
Right, so just while we're talking about policy a little bit, can I just inquire what's the status of the administrative regs and their
I know they've
getting
worked all night.
updated? You just,
Sure.
Yeah. okay, sorry to drill. Okay.
All good. So the administrative regulations follow the same format as the board policy, and they've been divided up into subfolders, and the administrator of the department or area that has overall authority over that subfolder has that subfolder in addition to the matrices that were created during the process of adopting the new board policy. For example, in the 4000 section of personnel, so I have that folder. I have the matrices for moving old board policy to new board policy. I have identified what the board policy committee said this needs to become an administrative reg. That old board policy reference has also been moved into that folder, so all the resources are together and stuck so we don't lose track of stuff, right? And we're going through now, and I'm going through just like the board policy committee did, and adjusting the baseline language to meet our unique needs, incorporating in old board policies or old administrative regulations that need to be incorporated. Then we'll sit down with Mr. Sutton and have him compile all that into an abbreviated version of a new administrative reg. So my goal for meeting with Mr. Sutton is October 31st to the deadline for all administrators who have responsibility for a folder to have that work complete. And then hopefully it can be turned around fairly quickly, and then we can send it back out for the first review, which will be among the administrators as well as the Board of Education.
And what about, like athletic code of conduct and student
So the
handbook?
student
Is
code
that
of
a split
conduct
integrated
is
as
part
well?
of an administrative reg, and that's under actually Mr. Bidlack's section. And that's currently being reviewed by Charlie Hellerich as well.
Howard.
Can I make a request of the chairman of the policy committee? And Madam Chairman, can you call a meeting as soon as we can, as soon as it's convenient for all committee members, to meet on the policy committee to hash out the things that trustee Efros brought up, number one. And number two, make a request to the entire board that we seriously consider making the policy committee a similar committee to FFLA and BIC, such that it meets on a regular basis. Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, but we meet on a regular basis, and if necessary, if there's no agenda items, we cancel the meeting. But that way, make it a little bit more of a regular process, so we have 3 regular committee meetings and not just 2. So we kind of had this policy committee is ad hoc and it's kind of random, and if we can make it more proceduralized, then I think a lot of these issues we're talking about will get cleaned up. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
So, Mr. President, I just want to be clear who are the members of the committee.
I rest my case.
There are 4 of us, right?
There's a question there.
Not for,
No,
can't be 4.
1,
There's
2,
not-
3, the original.
it's not for it's Cynthia, you're the chairman, and it's Howard and Lisa.
Okay.
Send out
Say that again.
Howard and Lisa.
I just want to support what Howard just said, because I think it would be great to have it be standing with right of cancellation, because there's board operating procedures to
Well,
tackle, there's,
We need to
There's
update
seven-
our bylaw. We're
yeah,
gonna
so
get it in there.
there's
There's
ongoing stuff that if we don't keep at it, we're just not gonna
As
do it.
Jackie pointed out in the previous meeting,
Yeah.
it is called a committee, not a task force,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's, you know,
And-
so.
but to that end,
But we need to update in our,
maybe we need to think about the standing committee,
it was a standing committee.
but maybe we don't need 3.
committee, and then for multiple reasons.
Because then I'm on FFLA
They
and
got out of
this,
routine
things
and
I can take more time off
So
during the day.
a whole.
We'll work with Tina and
Yeah.
Kelly, you know.
Thank you very much,
Alright, but,
We got it.
Chair.
Mr. President,
Hey, you.
can we also, if we're gonna be reconfiguring that, can we look at the makeup of committees? Because maybe we don't need 3 on all of them. Because if we're meeting during the day to accommodate staff, which is fine, maybe some of us can't be on 2 daytime
We could look
meeting
at that.
committees.
We could look at
So
that.
maybe 2 instead of 3 people on some would be
Could be.
better.
Well, again, here we are in September. By the time we get to January, we're going to restructure potentially. We're going to do the organizational meeting, and that might be the time.
And
that-
just another variation, a pattern, I've also seen where, there are boards that will spend, this is just one way I've seen it, is you spend 1 year doing self-studies and the next year creating policy out of that self-study, and so you're not always having policy being done every year, you're kind of like self-study and you figure out what's wrong. The next year you put the policies in place, and then it's a alternating cycle, so you're not continuously doing it.
Alright, but just again, to
Just saying,
plug-
that's another potential
It-
policy.
I will work
Part
with
of
Kelly
the
and
benefit
Tina.
of, which I endorse, regardless of which attorney we use, but having an attorney kind of oversee the policy is that it updates according to statutory changes automatically, and someone's looking out for it 24/7. So we don't have to be as diligent about when something like ICE or something, it'll update according to state, federal statute, local statutes, whatever, so that we are up to date constantly and the
Are you not
necessity for
doing that?
meeting all the time. We're gonna do
Oh,
it.
Kelly?
We are, so we're subscribed currently to the Less Than
Right.
Policy Service, so any policy updates get pushed through in enough time that it can meet our board policy of reviewing a first reading and then a vote the second reading.
For everyone to know, there are 2 types of policies. There are the policies that come down from on high, from federal and state level, we have to do. Those are basically boilerplate, check the box, we gotta do it. There was one that has to be there by October 1st related to abortion. And at the
bullying one.
at the legislative meeting
Yes.
last week, there was lots of consternation over not only the wording of that, but actually, do you have it in your policy? I communicated with Kelly, and she said when we did our mass policy update, that one was incorporated in, so we don't have to worry about that. But there was a lot of nervous people at the meeting last week in terms of, oh my God, is that in our policy manual? And so they're the ones that come from Lansing or from Washington DC that we have to do, and that's where you need the lawyer, and that's where you need LNA. But quite frankly, our responsibility on policy is more of what we, as a school board, want to have as our policy to administration and the buildings and the children of the district. Lusk and Albertson has very little to say about that. The only thing possibly they could say is, well, other districts have done this. You might want to, instead of reinventing the wheel, you might want to copy that.
Except that a
But-
big part of what anybody does
So-
is they make sure that when a state or federal statute is enacted,
Yes,
we don't have existing policy all over the place that contradicts it.
fine.
That would take a lengthy reading and a very careful reading that I
I'm
don't
agreeing
know
with
that we wanna do.
What I'm saying is there's a portion of this whole process that's
And let's don't say Lusk and Albertson
Or
anymore, because
that
we don't necessarily know.
a lawyer who's connected to the law and monitors the law to make sure that we're compliant with the law is a portion of it. But the other portion is the proactive piece that we want to do on our own, and then talking to the lawyers to make sure that it's consistent with the law, but that we craft with the lawyers and put it in. That will not be coming from the lawyers down, it's coming from us up.
Alright, that's.
And they're very
I don't
different.
know.
Let me just, one more point, just on my pattern, let me clarify my
Okay.
pattern. The pattern that I've seen before, it also, to your point, is that the pattern that I saw before, where you do 1 year is the self-study and the other year is the execution, it actually, the chair of that was the vice president. We don't really have, the vice president right now
Of the
does
board?
the evaluation. the person charged with that policy, it was under the role of the vice president, so you didn't have to come up with 3 people. It's the vice president always would have that role of doing that, and then you'd have 2 more people with that. Just saying, that was a pattern I saw.
Okay.
Just
All right, and you know, again, to reiterate what I said
I'm
earlier,
just saying that
we have to be
it
really
could be an
careful
officer
that we as a board
that's charged.
understand
It
that
could
we
be.
don't just,
I can-
can't just create policy that suits us because it has implications. Like, or the earlier suggestion of, we'll just put in our board policy that you can't vote at a committee, you know, a standing committee meeting. Some of us are uncomfortable with that because it right away violates statute.
Well, we would have to, anything, that's why we have Kelly there, anything we do and that we create a policy, we'd have to vet that through Kelly, through a lawyer, to make sure that we were not violating law, absolutely.
Alright.
The policy document is supposed to be as simple as possible.
Right, yeah.
It's not supposed to be a voluminous
That's
thing.
wrong.
I agree.
The administrative
it's
rights.
also
We've
the
gone from
No
where
one
we
even
were
know
to where
what
we
to
are
do.
now, it's
Right.
very different.
Because
How would
you-
even do
it-
that?
Alright,
Yeah,
so
okay.
I'm gonna, you know, so we can go to 3C, alright, do I need an amendment so we can vote on this resolution?
Cynthia already did that.
Cynthia, did you do the amendment?
Now in 3C, so.
Cynthia?
So I move that the Bloomfield Hills Board of Education waive our existing policy that requires us to vote after having considered something in the previous meeting, to allow us to vote this evening to approve the legislative priorities that have been proposed by the Oakland County School Board Association Legislative Committee.
Second.
I can give a little background because, yes, we've had to look at those priorities historically, but this is the very first time that's sort of the logical conclusion of having approved the new OCSBA bylaws last year. Since they became a separate 501c4 that does advocacy. This is the first time all through the year last year, the OCSBA Legislative Committee was working to define their priorities in forms of resolutions so that local boards can take decisions. We wanted to have a voice so we could do advocacy as an organization. Oakland County School Board Association can speak up and say our association believes these things. And so it was very much intended that those would be major, big picture items that would make sense that we as public school districts would want to advocate for.
And we're doing this for the minutes because it's time sensitive, so we have.
All right, but can I ask you a question about it before we vote on it? Can we-
We're voting on the amendment.
What?
We haven't voted on
the
it.
vote
Put it on.
to
So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and now we have.
Okay,
The
so
motion's
now
on the
there's-
So now can we
discussion
make a
about the
motion?
actual.
So wait, just a
So,
procedural
now-
point, this was just sort of a fluke and bad timing that we even had to do that, right?
Yes.
So let's just, I'm not saying we should make a habit of it, but maybe in our agenda or whatever flies around before a meeting, if the situation is ever to happen again, because we have to, let's put it out there that, hey, we're gonna have to vote on this, please really study it, ask your questions now.
This was an oops.
Yeah, I know, but
No, which is.
I haven't really read it
Or
because
maybe-
I didn't know.
We should pass
like,
it in the night.
This was the
I
last
did
day.
send it, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know, I sent, that's fine, okay. Any other,
Alright, so my
I guess we
question,
need a motion now to.
Motion.
motion?
I move that we approve the Oakland County School Board Association legislative priorities for 2019 and 2020.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
my question is, I'm curious, why this is not something that boards would delegate their superintendent, who also advocates legislatively, to do.
So there's two pieces to answering your question. One is that the Superintendent's Association votes on their own legislative priorities for the Oakland County Superintendent's Association. And the Oakland County School Board Association we've always developed our own. And we will continue to have that ability. We do look at theirs because we want to be speaking with the same voice to the high degree. But we want to be able to have our voice. This is the school board. We are the elected officials. The superintendents are not. So when you're talking to our electeds in Lansing, it's the voice the we are told that the value is because we are the elected officials, that we are speaking, our communities have chosen us, and we are standing up for what our communities
So
want.
to me, this is really informative, and that stands because in a separate issue, where sometimes the superintendents and the board may not speak with a unified voice. It is interesting that there has been there's precedence for a distinction being made about the elected voice versus the superintendent or hired voice, and that there's deference given to the elected official voice.
So we're told.
Howard?
Two things. Number one, to support what Cynthia just said. This is going to be voted on by 28 LEAs plus the Oakland County Oakland Schools ISD. So it's 29 school districts times 7 people. So this is going to be the voice of 203 elected officials. That's number one. On the details in here, if you look at it, I didn't count how many, but there are, let's say, 10 or 15 different bullet points in here. The vast majority are copies directly from MASB resolutions that are passed annually by the, what's the group, the Thursday night group that we go to?
Governance.
Not the governance committee, the MASB.
That's okay.
Oh, the delegate assembly.
Delegate assembly. So these are coming out of the delegate assembly across 500 school districts. In that room, if you guys haven't been there, in the delegate assembly are probably 400 or 500 people there. So each one of these has been approved by that group annually, except on page 2, the top one, on lame duck. That one is the exception of the rule. And it said, it was written by Oakland County School Board Association, no one else. And it says, Oakland County School Board Association supports lame duck parameters that will address introduction and accelerated passage of legislation after the November election. And I was at another school board meeting, and I believe it was Berkeley, where someone started asking, what does that mean? And it really gets into lame duck parameters. What is that? Obviously, after the lame duck session of 2018 and prior lame duck sessions, that there's lots of upset amongst many people in the state over what comes out after a general election between Election Day and December and Sine Die, which is the end of the legislative session sometime in December. There are many alternatives to that. One of the alternatives is to say after Election Day, you must, sine die, you must close your, there will be nothing voted on after Election Day. Therefore, preclude any lame duck session 100%. Realize that Michigan is one of the few states that has a full-time legislature. As an example, I just heard last week, Texas has a legislature that meets 2 months every 2 years. So therefore, there is no legislature for 22 months out of the 24 months in a 2-year period of time. So this whole lame duck structure is something that's relatively Michigan unique among state legislatures. Obviously, in Washington, that's different, but for Michigan, it's in the state legislature, we're kind of unique. So this lame duck's sentence here does not say that. It says supports lame duck parameters, and it's written in a kind of flexible way to allow, as I said, changes of what would go in, not changes, pardon me, they haven't figured out what that really means. What they're trying to do is tie the hands in some way, shape, or form of the state legislature. Maybe you make after Election Day, you make it a supermajority. 2/3 have to pass it. 3/4 have to pass it. Something that tries to make it such that you don't get lame duck the way it's been. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that that one's unique because it's not coming from MASB, and the words in there are kind of flexible
So
and
it's
loose.
intention, I think it's intended to put our foot in the door.
Yes.
Say the status quo is
think they changed it about making MSAB classes mandatory for board members. I think that came out. I don't think that's in this, right?
ASB has that in their legislative priorities.
Yeah, they did, but but open schools does not. So I think reading it, a lot of it is special, so, all right. Any other discussion on this before we vote for
Just
the?
a question, was the third grade reading law, that came out of lame duck legislature, right?
No, not lame
I don't
duck,
think so.
not lame duck.
No?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I think the
It was a few years, well, it definitely wasn't 2018, it was in 16.
I think the eight,
It was not lame dog.
I think A through,
Sorry. I thought it was
no, that's, I think A through F came out of lame duck.
Okay, right,
Grading
right,
schools A through F came out of lame duck.
Yes.
that's right.
But, anyway, yeah.
Which is causing a huge heartburn at,
No,
NDE.
I get that.
Do any other school boards other than in Oakland County have the structure where on legislative issues, the board and superintendent speak with separate bodies with separate voices?
In other counties, so I think OCSBA is one of the first in the state to adopt the 501c4 status. That what came as a consequence of changes at MASB, because we used to be underneath them. And so I don't know how many other counties have now become 501c4s. And we are usually kind of leaders of the pack. So I don't know the answer to that.
Really impressed
But-
with this.
But, I think it's superintendents across the state obviously work on legislative priorities. Not all counties have as active associations as we do.
Yeah, because I can think of times when maybe it wouldn't
Some
be
do, but
consistent.
not all of us.
And so it's nice to have a separate voice and have it be recognized as an
I
elected voice
know, I don't know to what sense that I don't know, but the most active ones are Wayne Risa, Macomb, us, and Kent. I would say would be the most
I
active.
would agree.
Do you think other counties, ISDs will follow suit and establish board-led?
Did we
Bodies
benchmark
that-
any district when we created the 501c4? Or any ISD? Or did we kind of do it, I don't know.
So it was done at the time of the School Finance Research Collaborative was the hot topic,
And still is.
and still is. But so the convergence of our changing our bylaws and the urgency of the work and our desire to be able to speak up and have a voice came together. And if we were going to have a separate 501c3 or 4, that was the hot topic. And we wanted to be able to do advocacy. We were giving a high percentage of our budget for OCSBA goes for scholarships for those of us who attend our advocacy institute in Washington.
And
People who go to Legislative Day in Lansing. If you spend X percentage of your budget doing advocacy, then you need to be a C4.
so we didn't benchmark, there was no comparator, no exemplar that we copied.
No.
Okay.
No. So we really wanted to be able to have a voice, to be able to say, we want the work of the
So we're on the leading edge.
of the collaborative, and be able to speak up.
All right.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. I believe we had a second. I'm sure the notes had. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That's what the motion passes. So the only other thing, which I don't know if we want to make it up.
Communicated back to CSBA by you guys.
I believe Sherry has a copy to be
Sure, yeah, so it has to be transmitted like
Oh, I
tomorrow.
like
Yeah, it's like time critical.
The only other thing
Yeah.
I'd need an amendment to the agenda if we wanted to discuss would be, because I didn't think we'd have it in time, but our consultants, Ray and Associates, have put together feedback from a combination of the survey and their focus groups in terms of the qualities. We could, if we want to make it an amendment, talk about it now, or we could just kind of, look at these and just, have our comments go, back and forth, because they're ready to take these and put this in the flyer. And this is feedback that they got from, it's a combination of the survey and the focus groups in terms of the characteristics. Want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion that to discuss the
Superintendent.
superintendent feedback.
Okay. Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Hi,
Aye. Okay, so this is the feedback that, again, we got this literally 3 hours ago. I haven't had a chance to look at it. There's a lot of documents behind this, but the summary, which is going to go ultimately in the flyer, is going to be a combination of this. It was about, now, Tina, I don't know if you have the details. I know when I was looking at it with Kelly, they said, or someone sent me, there was 80%, I don't know how many people came to, do we have numbers on the community nights? Or we do?
Yep, we do, let me just grab my pen.
Well, go over the major things too, that we had the community nights, but we also had online feedback, like all the ways that we asked for feedback.
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone's aware, but for the people in the room, public and online feedback, that was last, everyone had access to that. We had probably, Tina, correct me, 15, 20 individual focus groups ranging from elected officials to educators to students. There was 2 student focus groups that was very successful, and I talked with successful various other groups, and then 2 senior. We can do it via, you know, a Google Doc, we can go back and forth, but some colleagues want to meet. Yeah. Yeah.
So what Mark is saying is that there is a huge one of it first, you know, we should have a exercise.
That's a good thing to look at for like, you know, right,
and so in terms of things, ways for the comfortable and exciting in terms of the numbers and I all agree with Mark, though. I think okay, well, I mean, otherwise, what we do then?
you know, to really good talk about it.
What that puts is number one or two.
Focus of the school district is student achievement. That is our student achievement. And our district in particular, all students achieve very, very well. Maybe not as well as we would like, but very, very well. Where we have things that we need to work on is on achievement. There are African American children and many disadvantaged children who are far inferior to all the other children. Question number 27 says specifically enhance that we are the superintendent who possess the ability to enhance student performance, especially in identifying and closing or narrowing achievement gaps or gaps in student achievement. Now that came out as number 17 in the combined ranking. But we are not obligated to 100% follow the consensus of all the different groups. And it's a good advice for us. But this is what we as a school board want. So I believe that I would like to either eliminate or eliminate to either 12 or 17 in the club. I don't know whether to 12 because it's safe, whether if we add number 27, and whether that takes it to 13 and that gets the balance and we need to exclude one, or whether we can go to 13. But I would make a motion, or at least a firm recommendation for Jack, that we add number 27 to the list.
I want to caution,
And if you look at our vision, it says that we are going to lead the nation in student achievement for all students. That again focuses on number 27.
Or was it this exercise of the portion of the flyer to be what our community
No, sir.
and us?
It is a recommendation to them, but we are the school board. And it is our responsibility.
All right, Howard, we heard,
represent
we
the entire community.
heard Mark.
So, what you just said is we want our superintendent to focus on these things. This has to do with qualities. What are we looking for in the qualities of a superintendent? Superintendent may have certain qualities, but we say focus on different things. But focus and what the agenda items are for the superintendent or goals are different than the qualities that we're looking for.
But it says here possesses the ability. This is looking at the superintendent's ability. And quite frankly, what I would be looking for is not only that ability in words, but in action. When I'm going to be interviewing new superintendents, I'm going to be looking for a track record. I want to look for a passion in the superintendent that he sees student achievement as the primary focus of him, and I want to see a track record of achievement in that
I got the point. I have, I'm gathering feedback from everybody, all 7 of us, on what, I got feedback that that we have the points that made the top 12 from the, I'll talk to Ray and Associate. I'm assuming these are the top, these are the top 12. 2 of these. One feedback was to push them to the top. And then let's hear other, Cynthia, have any feedback on this or not enough time?
Not enough time.
Okay.
And I must admit, I haven't enough time too, but that was the one I focused on in the last 10 minutes.
And speaking of time, I'm gonna go catch my flight.
He's heading to DC.
I have no problem with putting them in rank order, looking at as myself. I don't think that people go down and look, I really don't think they're gonna go
If they're the
one
top.
by one and, that's not, they're looking at the package.
So
And
what-
they're frankly looking at more than just these bullet points. These are what they're going to be writing their cover letter to. Basically, like when they apply to us, it's not what is pulling them to us, it's they're saying,
Well-
okay, if I want that job, I gotta be able to meet this criteria. And so putting them in rank order according to our community, I think would be fine.
And it's not just community. Maybe this is us, central office, community. This is educate. This
The
is everyone.
exercise.
This is
But
the
the
exercise
exercise
that
of
they
putting
did.
them in-
But
Mhm.
the exercise of putting them in order of how it came
But
out.
7 of us are responsible for hiring and firing the superintendent.
I get
Right,
it, but
but-
we
and
did
I
this
put-
exercise for a reason.
Yeah.
Of course,
Feedback.
it's an advisory.
Exactly.
It's advisory.
Me, I agree with that.
But
I agree
to
with that.
Jackie's point, 2 points. This is gonna be on a flyer, limited exposure, but it is the window to the cover letter and
Yes.
should be, if we're being transparent, it should be a window into the expected interview questions to come.
Absolutely.
And I think for that reason, we should put in the number 13 because we know it's a priority for all of us. We've all talked about it.
13?
I don't, yeah.
Oh, you
you're-
said that
your-
Jennifer's saying number
27.
Sorry,
It's,
27.
which
I
is
don't know
ranked
where I got-
17th. Do we bump that up?
Actually ranked 15th.
What?
Is it
There,
right?
that's where I got the
It's ranked
13.
13th.
So
Yeah,
this-
it just didn't make the cut.
Oh, it
Like,
just
it's
so
the
you're adding
first
a one
runner.
Oh,
next
so
one
Howard
down.
said
Instead
17.
of the 12, it's the 13th.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
it should be in there.
Oh, it's 13. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it
So
should
how?
be
All
in
right. I
there.
thought it was
Hires
17.
in what
Well, it is-
order,
Okay.
Education is
So you
combined.
say 13 instead of 12.
I'm just looking at.
whatever, or
We could-
throw
We
in
can
it,
small
throw
the
it in.
font. I get
Yeah.
Here's my vote on it, and,
No, I'm not saying we have an opportunity since we're all together before we finalize it.
this
Talk.
is, having also not had a chance really to read it, I caution again, pulling community members, teachers, stakeholders into a room, begging for feedback, and then not taking the feedback.
No, I think the
agree.
suggestion, which is not a bit, is like, can we go to 13?
No, because that's the,
Oh, no,
Yeah,
they-
they're
you know,
having
like-
another
Alright,
one
just
that's
put it
13.
in with
Yeah.
That way it doesn't knock off.
Yeah.
It's not knocking off. It's not 17. We knock 5 off. It's the
but
next
I do
one.
think, we have to be of the philosophy that we honor the voice that we
I agree
solicit.
with you.
Oh, we-
Sure, but we're not
No,
throwing
we're,
out the whole thing, we're just adding
No,
one
but
additional
I don't
vote.
think we should say as a board, we usurp this or that, or else don't ask.
But let me
No,
ask
we're
one,
not
let me ask
usurping.
one question in terms of timing to go with our timeline. So the timeline is the 17th. So I'm happy to start a conversation, amongst ourselves because we do need time. We just got this. Are we all comfortable that we finalize it by the 17th within our timeline, which is a week, less than a week. So
Are
so
we
between
gonna finalize the list of,
or our comments, try to small the font, add a 13. We want certain things to the top. I think we're going to go with these. Maybe add a 13, and then do we want to move things around?
Seems like a consensus is
Someone explain to me how the consultant recommendation was even derived? I don't understand it. I'm looking at the total raw score. I'm trying to figure out how they move from, how do they come up with a recommendation? Which column did they use? Can anyone
Well, the
figure it out?
rank aid, I'm sure is a combination. I can ask that.
I haven't had a chance. Well, all right, why don't we're gonna have to read all this stuff and figure it all out. This is too complicated to decide on the fly.
Just curious, do we know how many people have
These things aren't
submitted an
making sense.
application, or we haven't talked to them about that?
Some have, I don't know, Tina, we know numbers of how many submitted applications for the job.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay.
But there are applications in before these qualities.
Okay, it's like more than one.
Yeah, more than one.
Okay.
I think, I don't,
More than one, less than another.
I don't think they gave a number, not even fewer, several for me to direct.
Okay, sure, okay, just curious.
Well, Mr. President, would it hurt our timeline significantly if we deferred the final decision on this until the board meeting on the 26th?
I'd prefer we get the finalized flyer done by the 17th within the timeline.
The 17th, which is next Tuesday.
Because Howard, the app has already been open.
Yeah.
I understand.
For a while,
I understand.
so
It's just
we gotta get this flyer
we're
out.
all right. Then
I don't, listen,
this is like really, really
we
important, guys.
engage them to do this. Now, I think at this point, what we've been discussing is whether we add one, whether we move something, I mean, I think it's just semantics, which we should be able to
We should be able to
do that in
massage.
the next couple of days.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
We'll start a Google Doc.
Well, and we can if that would be helpful. So this explanation, which I didn't get through either in a short amount of time, but it should help us in terms of what they provided. And what I can do is have you tell me what's helpful, but I can have Gina Marie put the recommendation in a Google Doc. So, and I can have it, everyone can just put in suggestions or comments. I can have her, recreate this or see if Rain Associates would send it to us in some format. You tell me, just so you can have the list.
I think we all have the backup. I think a Google document with comments, and then I'll read through the comments and try to formulate it, and then have a conference call with them, and just, in terms of putting together the final.
And I think what we need to do is we need to have a Google Doc, get comments, see what the final or the proposed final version, and then get, I hate to say it, a poll, but some sort of consensus to make sure that we all agree with that final version before it goes to Rain
Yes, I get
Associates.
it, before it goes to final.
Yeah.
I just want to correct myself because I was misreading this and not reading the right line.
You're not the only one.
Number 27, the combined ranking is 17, not 13.
I thought.
Yeah, the Board of Education gave it 13, but the combined ranking is 17.
But if you look at some of the other combined rankings that ended up in are 19, 18,
So we need to start.
No, wait,
my point is
15, 15, even though we only have 12. I mean, I have to read the document.
That's my point. We need to take time to read it.
I don't understand what they did.
I just.
I don't know.
I don't know
I'll ask-
how you get from these
I
into
had read it wrong. I
recommendation.
just wanted to correct.
I'll ask
Yeah,
them. I
thank
don't
you.
know if it's the last number, which says 13, or the first one that says 17. I'll clarify what that is, and I'll send it.
Well, and I think if we have time and really read this, I think it'll explain it.
Probably.
I don't know how much
Well-
discretion they had, or how much of an algorithm it was.
When I looked at the survey that was sent out to parents and identical the one that we took, it had some open-ended, do we get to see what those
I'll ask.
responses are as well?
One was like, give a sample interview questions, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see
I'll ask
those.
They sent it to us. It's like
Oh, we
25
had that.
pages.
Woohoo!
Of the
You
comments.
sent that to it.
I got it at 3 o'clock. I sent it to you at 3:01. I didn't read it.
Hey, it's better than 481, but I'll take it.
I didn't read it. I sent it to you guys before I even read it. I was like, here, let you guys got 3 hours or whatever.
Are we done with this agenda?
Yes.
There's
Well,
a,
then I'm calling for adjournment.
there's a member of the public that would like to make a comment if we would consider putting a amendment to the agenda, Mr.
I move
Chairman.
that we move public comment to the end of the agenda.
Well, we've already done it once. I move that we add a public comment to our agenda.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Right, we're moving it from the
It's already been.
beginning to the end.
It already
We're
was.
adding a public
No, adding
comment.
We went through it.
We're adding a public comment.
We're adding second public comment.
Nobody was there,
Oh,
but
right.
we did do it. Yeah, so we're adding a second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, public comment, okay. Public comment, we have a card.
I'm just here to learn.
Okay.
Here.
Well, there's a lot to learn from this man. He's a great teacher. Okay. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'll make it super brief because I know everybody's tired. I really want to thank you for this discussion tonight. I texted Nancy Costello, the director of the Michigan State University First Amendment Clinic, while you were having that discussion about the Open Meeting Act. I said, they are talking so passionately about the Open Meeting Act, and she was like, could not be happier that they are engaging with this. Maybe we're making some progress after all these years. Yet, I want to say that I disagree with the direction of the conversation moving toward blocking the public from more of your meetings. I want to point out that the study sessions, at a minimum, the study sessions of the full board and a board retreat do not have many of the concerns that you expressed related to committees. And I want to share with you that community members have spent over $1,500 of private money to record some of these sessions. We have 3, I believe, board study sessions and 1 FFLA committee meeting. We would be happy to share those documents, those videos with you to post anywhere on your official site. They are your meetings in your rooms, your people talking. Our purpose in recording them is purely to create more transparency because there's such a high level of interest in what you're talking about here. So I would encourage you to, at a minimum, consider keeping these study sessions and your board retreats open to the public and recording them because there is interest. You have seen this. And some of these videos have hundreds of views. I'd have to check to see how many. Yes, approaching 1,000, you know. So anyway, please consider that. I'd also like to say that I know you've received advice from Kevin Sutton of the Lusk firm about these issues that you were discussing. And I want to express that many members of the public have a concern about other advice that the Lusk firm has given to your board over the years as connected to Open Meeting Act issues. As you know, the public has, the Michigan State Clinic on behalf of community members has submitted a document to the Attorney General's office on that very topic, questioning the advice that you received from this Lusk firm. And so I would request that you give us an opportunity to get an outside attorney, not from the Lusk firm, to also provide some feedback to you on these issues, because it's possible that the Lusk firm is some advice from the Lusk firms appears to be most concerned about protecting privacy of administrators. No offense, I hope, meant to you or any of the other administrators in the room tonight. But this is a real concern. We have a legal document that's very well put together, making an argument that there's problems here. We kind of had a trauma in this district related to transparency and lack of transparency. So I hope you'll consider that, and that you'll consider maybe allowing us to bring you an outside opinion from the Michigan State First Amendment Clinic before you vote on these issues. Finally, very, very quickly, I just want to shift slightly to talk about the International Academy. I want to publicly in this meeting thank the board members here, Lisa and Jennifer and Howard, that I've seen at consortium district board meetings, talking to their colleagues. It's taking a lot of time, and I appreciate the effort to inform these other boards about these issues, and I thank you, Paul, for preparing the video with Carol about her presentation. I have a lot of concern about what some of the other districts appear to be doing, hiring a separate attorney that is not the same attorney that was approved in the Joint Steering Committee open meeting. And I'm sorry that I missed a discussion if that happened earlier tonight. I was working in a different part of the region here, and I want to express that as a parent, I strongly support option 1 that the task force has developed. I think it's very important to have elected school board members representing the public, modeled after the
I see.
ISD's, approach with the legislative recommendations here. I think that's really the way to go in the wake of the kinds of issues that have been raised and related to the International Academy. So I really hope that you're really all 100% behind that option that you voted for, and that there's no effort to block other school boards from hearing this presentation and independently assessing that possibility. That's it. Thank you.
I'm lying, I cheated. Can I speak in real quick?
Sure.
Anytime you're interested in coming at the IA,
Could you introduce yourself,
oh,
sir?
sorry. Brad Davies, chemistry teacher at the International Academy.
He's my daughter's current.
Yeah,
Are you a Bloomfield Hills employee?
I am a Troy truck. But in a sense, I also feel like I am a Bloomfield employee because of the interworking nature between the Bloomfield Hills and IA. So all I'm saying is, I know you guys have been there, but anytime you want to come back and see what's going on, I'll happily give you the tour myself or someone that,
You work in the Troy district, in the Troy building?
No.
Troy contract in the central campus.
So you work,
Mhm. So come on over anytime. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
He's a
Meeting
famous
adjourned.
teacher.
I feel like John right
How late did you get my last text?
now.
Okay.